This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Place to Be Nation, Adam Murray here, one half of the NBA team podcast, along with my co-host Andrew Riche. Turns out we forgot to record an intro for this one, so it's just me saying, here's part 3. Enjoy.
All right, Adam, let's hit on the Miami Heat, or should we just call it the celebratory final season for Dwayne Wade parade? Or is this going to be a legitimate contender of a team in the Eastern Conference?
Well, we don't know what this team is going to be because of all the rumored trades. That's why we'll sort of just tread lightly with this preview, because it could be totally null and void and everything could be completely gutted. But as far as this team is, it just really is just a Dwayne Wade farewell tour, because they've added nobody because they have no money. The Tyler Johnson, I don't know why they felt like we need to keep him, because
for those in the know that aren't in the know, Tyler Johnson signed what they call an arenas provision contract, which is where you can only sign them to just so much money because they were undrafted free agents in the first 2 years, but then on the back end of the contract you can pay them whatever you want. So Johnson's contract ballooned from the first 2 years being up to maybe like $5 or $8 million a year up to like $19 million.
Yeah, it was $8 million for 2 years, and now it's 19. And
it was an offer sheet by the Nets that the Heat matched back in the now fabled, I believe, summer of 2016. Is that right?
Yeah, and he's a fine, scrappy backup, but $19 million for a scrappy back for $38 million for 2 years
for a guy who averages 12 rebounds and 2 assists. Yeah, not great.
That's kind of, it's a little rough to have that for him. And then, all their other mid-level signings, Dion Waiters hasn't moved the needle, Kelly Olynyk hasn't moved the needle, James Johnson hasn't moved the needle. The Hassan Whiteside experiment sort of backfired in their face because, he's being awesome, he's doing, he's rebounding, he's doing everything he needs to. They want to play small ball, and now he's effectively useless.
Yeah, it's almost like I've seen some preseason already with them where Whiteside's trying to take threes, where it's almost like a square peg round hole scenario. Waiters was sidetracked with an ankle injury. He played for only 30 games. When he played, he was fairly effective. Kelly Olynyk actually boosted their three-point shooting. They were 11th in three-pointers made, which is like a marked improvement over the previous 2 seasons when they were like close to the bottom. Defensively under Eric Spoelstra, they're always going to be really good. And they were good last year, and I don't expect it any different because, in truth, there's really not much to talk about in terms of player movement, even though you're talking about a lot of hints of trades, because they didn't really do a lot because they didn't have room to do a lot. The only guys that are not there that were there the year before are, I believe, Okoro White and Derek Walton Jr. Pretty much the rest of it are the same, except for some small additions like Briante Weber, Jarnell Stokes, DeAndre Liggins, Yonte Mayton. Not really a lot of movers and shakers.
It's not movers, but it gives credit to their D-League franchise for being able to find these gems in the rough to fill out their bench every year as well. They have no money. They have no money.
Force, huh? That's the Sioux Falls
Skyforce, and all of a sudden, every year there's always some kid who comes out of the G League, and he's productive. He's a player.
Yeah, the new one is, I believe, Duncan Robinson, who we're going to see go back and forth as a two-way.
And all their hopes are on Bam Adebayo now because he showed a pulse last year. He was better than he was at Kentucky, which he wasn't good.
Here's the problem with Bam Adebayo. He looked great in flashes in terms of his rebounding and his shot blocking because he's enormous. But was it enough to be able to justify yourself trying to do a dump for Hassan Whiteside? Because Whiteside's unhappy. And it's one of those situations where if you can't fit the team around him, then he might become unruly and want to go somewhere else, which the Heat are not really that familiar with. They usually have a fairly player-friendly culture, a culture where everyone sort of buys into the system type of deal. And if Whiteside doesn't buy in, that's when you're going to have to start thinking maybe we need to get some value out of him.
Get some value out of him, or we're our centerpiece. We need you. Okay, I'll stay. Oh yeah, you don't fit in at all. And the other one is Justice Winslow, who, after his rookie year injury, still hasn't We don't know what he is yet.
This is kind of like a Jabari Parker situation, but there was no injury, if that makes any sense. Because it's like he's good. He shows those moments where he's really good, but you already extended Josh Richardson, who kind of plays the same position as him. And then you have Dion Waiters there. Winslow is more of, I want to say, like a defensive type of slasher. And those guys are valuable anyway because you want him to be able to guard the best player or the best small forward on the team. But the thing is, like, he is a restricted free agent coming up. He hasn't shown it. And if you haven't seen enough now and you don't put an extension together in November and he blossoms and has a great final year, then you might have egg on your face because he'll sign elsewhere.
That's the thing, and they'll have money for when he's around, but it's just the team is good because you're better than the Orlandos and the Atlantas and the Chicagos.
Oh, this team could make the playoffs.
Oh, no, they're going to make the playoffs. It's just the problem is they're the mid-level exemption team, and it's hard to be excited for a 7 seed because you're going to play hard, but you just don't have any talent that could push you over the edge. And we like we mentioned, we're sort of treading lightly because of the rumors in the air of this is where Jimmy Butler wants to go because they will give him the max money, and then that will lead us to Minnesota.
I would have to imagine this is all, like you said, rumor and innuendo, but if that does happen, I would have to imagine Dragic would be on the move. So
I don't know how they would piece it together, but if they did, this year is sort of just a punt year for them either way. They don't have any draft picks. Here's the thing. If
you put Whiteside there, where would he fit? That would be a really strange fit in Minnesota. I hate to get into the speculation too much because it might not even happen.
That's why we're saying we mentioned it.
Well, the only thing I found interesting in the summer was that they had a very small amount of wiggle room to make a change by getting rid of the salary for Wayne Ellington, and they re-signed him anyway. I found that kind of interesting. I'm not saying Wayne Ellington's a bad player because he was good off the bench, but and he's a good three-point shooter, but do you think they could have done something else, maybe freshen it up, kind of the way they did with bringing in Kelly Olynyk the year before? Well, could they have done something in place of re-signing him? Do you feel like the team needed a freshening up?
No, the team can't really do much because you have to sort of work with the chemistry you have. If you have no money, that's better to take, the players as opposed to, let's get a random piece and hope he fits in. Work with what you got. They don't have much wiggle room. Riley and Spolestra somehow make it work. That's all I can really say about them.
How good is Dwayne Wade now? I know he's going in his last year. A lot of people see it more as vanity, but I still think he's a fairly effective guard.
He's not an effective guard anymore.
You would say no.
I believe we had a bet last year. I said he's not going to even average 15 points, and he was under it.
He averaged 13. Yeah, under 13.
And it's the same way. It's just your body gives out before your mind, and he wants to keep playing. He just knows, I'm done. So this is the farewell tour. That's pretty much all they have to look forward to. What else do you have for the Heat?
You're just kind of scrapping. It's the same cast, but what it is that's the same cast that won 44 games. If I had to put a bet on it, I would say that they would probably go be 40, 41 and 41. I don't really see them over. They always overachieve, but I think their ceiling, if they overachieve, is lower than it was the year before.
If they overachieve, they'll be at 44 because it's the same team. They should probably have the same record.
There's a lot of stasis going on unless they, really rock the boat with a deal. But, that's basically it for the Heat. You can almost, do a rewind last year and you'll kind of get the same sort of predictions and such. But that's sort of how they play it. It's kind of always, unless they really go for the jugular with a big move, it's kind of always same old for Miami. And now we can move on to the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Thibodeau has brought his Chicago Bulls dumpster fire with him. It's kind of hard to go from being the sympathetic side of the Garpax-Thibodeau feud to being the enemy of the Thibodeau Bulls 2.0.
You just could not wait to get to the juicy stuff when it comes to the Minnesota, political cesspool that's going on with Jimmy Butler and Karl Anthony Towns and the Twittergate that went on between them and all of that. Well, it's not really Twittergate so much as it is social media, huh? I heard some family members got involved with the back and forth.
It's just, it's a mess, and for somebody who claims to, we'll keep it in the locker room, this is a team issue. Everything just sort of came out, and everybody came out knives out.
In today's culture, that's impossible. Like, everything is going to get out, no matter whether
everything's
you like it or
going to get out,
don't.
but everybody's coming with knives out this time, as opposed to, it's just, he brought all his players from the Bulls. He wore them all out. Everybody knows what the problems were, and it went from the super feel-good story last year of, oh, they're going to be a home, they're going to be a 4 seed.
Let's hit on last year a little bit. They win 47-35. They had to win a play-in game, which the last regular season game was always going to be Nuggets Wolves. It wasn't a special game. It just so happened that wound up being the play-in game because those were the last two teams playing for the last spot. The Wolves won the game, and they go to the first round and they get eviscerated in the last couple of games of the series by a much superior Houston Rockets team. And you could just tell from the atmosphere and the attitude on the bench that the Wolves just something was off track. They had a bright future. You have Towns. You have Andrew Wiggins, who made a boatload of money on an extension. You brought in Jeff Teague. You bring in Jimmy Butler. It just didn't feel like – it felt like something was off. And now after the summer passed and they didn't really make too many moves in the summer because they didn't have the money to do so, a couple of small acquisitions like Luol Deng, drafting Josh Okogie, and Keita Bates-Diop, then all of a sudden it turned into a firestorm when it was announced during training camp or before training camp opened that Jimmy Butler basically told Glenn Taylor, the owner, and Tom Thibodeau, I'm not coming back. I want out.
And well, what do you expect when you have young players and somebody who's a veteran? Of course, the culture's clashed, and then like I had mentioned with the getting all the old Bulls in and running them ragged, and then you have Wiggins, who you signed to the max deal, and then you bring in a player who. Well, that was supposed to be Wiggins. Well, that's Wiggins' next level was Jimmy Butler.
Well,
and
a lot of people knew that was going to be a problem with Wiggins and Butler, like from the word go. People who were on the optimistic side said, yeah, but you're getting so much talent, and Butler's a leader, and he can guide Wiggins, but it just didn't work. He was kind of in the way of Wiggins. I know a lot of people, poo-poo on the lack of efficiency in Wiggins' game, but he still averaged 18 points a game. He gets to the free throw line a lot. He's a talented player. I think a lot of the people that are downtreading Wiggins because of comparing him to Butler are not seeing his upside. Is he overpaid? Probably.
He was paid for his upside, which then your upside moves in next door to you. And like we constantly mention this with Charlotte, you have two players who are exactly the same style. There's no spacing, there's no moving around. All you can do is really Wiggins was just getting mop-up duty, and I hate to be the one half the thing because everyone's all poo-pooing on him, but it wasn't his fault that they bring in a better version of him. Of course his numbers are going to go down. Of course his efficiency is going to go down.
I don't argue that. I do think Jimmy Butler, as of right now in 2018, is a better player than Andrew Wiggins. Now in 2022, that might be different. But I get what you're saying.
You swap out Rubio, who's a pass-first guard. Okay, he'll get the ball to Wiggins. To Teague, who's straight-up combo point guard, and will take the shot. So
I thought the Jeff Teague signing was a disaster.
I thought it was kind of a wash. It was just you probably wouldn't gotten the same numbers with Rubio. It's really just the town show of just him being a beast.
And there's all that Timberwolves knocking, which I get. Derrick Rose didn't really do much. And then you re-signed him, which boggled my mind. I know it's only $2.4 million. Bringing in Luol Deng for about the same amount, whatever. Taj Gibson actually worked out fairly well. So I'm not.
But yeah, you bring back Derrick Rose, so Tyus Jones goes, well, I want out, and Thibodeau had to talk him off the ledge, saying, no, you're going to be a focal point. We'll develop you more this year. Well, it's kind of hard to do if you're known for not playing young players, and then bringing in all your old guys and then ran them all to the ground. So it's beginning to the feel good story has quickly turned in Minnesota, and Dang, he's overpaid, but it's not like he's.
Well, here's the problem. He's supposed to be like your defensive center. You were so bad defensively, and this is Tom Thibodeau. Now, I get that some coaches have to embrace what you're good at. So if you have a team that's really good offensively in the vein that, a team with Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins and Jeff Teague would be, then yeah, go for it. But they got to be able to shoot threes. That's a thing that Thibodeau just never ever embraced when he was in Chicago. He still is yet to do it in Minnesota, and it's just ragging him down. They play a slow pace. Their defense and their rebounding need work. I don't think they had any money or any room to make a move to get a center, and the best option you had really wasn't even a center. It was more of like a mid-level type of offensive power forward, Anthony Tolliver. Now, can he bring leadership? Maybe. Then you also lost probably one of the only guys that Thibodeau relied on outside of the rotation, which he leaned very heavily on. The starters played more minutes than any other starting lineup in the league. But Nemanja Bjelica, he's out. He went to Sacramento.
Well, he went to Philly, he went to Europe, and then he went to Philly, then to Europe, then to Sacramento. So that was just a weird. And he was a good stretch four. It was just he got injured all the time, and.
But what I'm saying is that this is a guy who had 21 starts when they had some issues with injuries with guys like Butler and Gibson, and you let him walk. And now that means you have to play Dang. You got to rely on him.
You had to let him walk because there's no space for him, and you can't afford to keep him because you're already up through the tax now, and there's nothing you can do, and they're just at a messy situation, and people are gonna try to get Butler for pennies on the dollar. Well, maybe it's time to you traded away Zach Levine, and Chris Dunn in the first round. Just get a couple young guys, and maybe you'll win again. It's not like the talk. Well, he still thinks he could talk him back, and then he wants Philly called and he said, "Well, I want Ben Simmons." Like, well, be realistic.
It's crazy to think that Chicago may have actually won that deal, but in essence, they probably did. It depends on the value they get if they make a deal for Jimmy Butler. They let him walk for nothing.
Chicago
then
did not win the deal as of yet. We will get to that when we get to Chicago.
Let's get into the weeds a little bit here. Jamal Crawford, any chance he comes back?
No,
he's done. Okay. Josh Okogie, that was their first round draft pick, and then the one previous who had a broken foot and barely played was Justin Patton. Are you expecting much out of them?
He broke his foot again, I believe.
Oh wow, I didn't even know that.
He got injured again, and it's not good for him.
Okogie's a guard, so and they do need some guard play, so I think they'll be all right. Luol Deng, I think he might actually be good.
He'll be productive. He's not terrible. He just, it's hard to justify getting paid what he gets paid to do. But it's not like the wheels fell off like last year, Kobe. It's just he will provide solid backup minutes, and he can be a mentor to, he can teach Wiggins to, be a little bigger, and I don't see it as a bad signing.
And last thing, they got 47 wins last year and made the playoffs. Will they do it again? Can they go to the playoffs a second time?
I'm going to say under.
Because of even with or without Butler?
I'm going to say they keep Butler to the deadline, and then they're forced just to get rid of him by the end. And it might be one of those where they tell him at Christmas time to sit at home.
I think Butler will be traded by the beginning of November. I think there will be a moving around. I'll go out on a limb and say they still make the playoffs in the West.
I'll go out on a limb and probably say he'll be traded before this podcast comes out, so we sound like total idiots.
Well, that's okay. We sound like total idiots anyway most of the time. Karl Anthony Towns, best big man in the league? ?
He's top 5.
We've talked about this before with guys like Embiid, and who am I missing? Even Aaron Gordon, I would say, is good. Rudy Gobert.
Davis.
Anthony Davis,
Towns, Embiid. Well, he's still too fragile to be in that list yet.
I mean, let's be honest. With Glenn Taylor, this is a situation where, it was a no-win for Jimmy Butler. It was no win. Towns is the guy. You're going to give him the max extension. You got to go with him.
That's the thing is, Butler played his hand, and well, is this gonna be all about me or all about that Towns? Okay, it's about Towns. Ah, crap.
Yeah, hate to do the Back to the Future here, but there's just a big giant to be continued on this preview.
Yeah, as of now, they're not looking good, but again, last year was a feel good story, which was confusing for us because we're used to having them in the lottery and terrible. But if you have Towns signed to a max deal, if you got him for 5 more years, that's not a terrible thing.
And now we're going to hit on the Chicago Bulls. Adam, this team, as bad as they were 27-55, but I actually thought they were going to be worse last year. I thought they were going to be like a sub-20 team potentially because that's how bad things were looking. But they did have a lot of bright spots despite a crazy incident where Nikola Mirotic, who had played on the team at the time, got punched in the face by Bobby Portis, his teammate, and he broke his jaw and he was out for months. And then Mirotic, who was probably their best player at the time, would you argue that?
Yeah.
Best scorer, and definitely. He averaged 17 points a game. He got traded to the Pelicans. But all of a sudden, Lauri Markkanen, Chris Dunn, who had been traded from Minnesota as part of that Jimmy Butler trade, they shined for the most part. Markkanen really was able to show early on when he was playing in place of Mirotic that he could really shoot the three and do some things. Portis comes off the bench. Zach LaVine came in late in the season, around February. He looked okay, but then in the offseason, it got a little weird. They made some decent draft picks with Wendell Carter Jr. and Chandler Hutchinson. Then they just opened the wallet for Zach LaVine and, shockingly, Jabari Parker.
That's just... This is the mystery of the Chicago Bulls for me right now. Is they you like you mentioned, Chris Dunn found a little happy place. Lauri Markkanen, we knew what he was. He was just a stretch 5. Oh,
but I'm surprised at how good of a rebounder he is at the NBA level. That's what kind of made him more of a dual threat.
Yeah, and he was able to and wanted to get low, so that was cool. The problem was, like you mentioned, for one, you trade Mirotic away, that's fine. You keep one of the two. But you take on Omar Ashik and his $12 million salary this year, that's guaranteed. So you're already telling your fans, we're not going to try. We're not going to try next year because we're just going to take this guy who's not going to play and he's going to take up tons of money. Then, the Zach LaVine signing for $20 million, that's just a head scratcher of.
Now let me ask you this: do you think another team would have given him 19? I think it was actually an offer sheet for the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, Sacramento gave him an offer sheet and they matched it. Which was, are you just that desperate to win the Jimmy Butler trade where you're going to take him? He is not worth $20 million at this point. He might be in year 4, but right now in year 1. It just doesn't make much sense.
He averaged 16 points, just about 4 rebounds and 3 assists a game. He was getting to the free throw line a lot, and he developed a 3-point shot before he tore his ACL. But a lot of people know him because of the YouTubulars as like a phenomenal dunker, great athlete. Did you sort of see the same bounce when he came back from his ACL injury?
No, he obviously came back a little slower and a little, it takes a while. You're not going to be the high flying dunker.
He's also very young. Like, I think he's in his early 20s, 22, 23 years old. So.
Yeah, he's 23 or 20. But then, like you said, just getting Jabari Parker and then saying, well, we're going to play him at the 3.
Well, Markkanen's also out with an injury to begin the season, so they're going to have to play Parker at the 4.
But it's just he doesn't play defense, and it's okay. You have Wendell Carter. He's your replacement for, if he is who they think he is, he'll be good. Him and Markkanen should work well together because they're not going to be clogging each other's space. That's fine. It's just, okay, we'll wait for Robin Lopez to go. You got Bobby Portis, who I think you and I are the only ones who like him. I
know, but the thing about Portis is that, especially with the Wendell Carter drafting, it seems like he's the odd man out. They're going to just let him float out there as an RFA next summer and just see how it goes.
Well, that's just the way they've treated him since day one. He fills the stat sheets in his limited minutes, but again, you and I are the only ones who are there. Jabari Parker, it's a 1 year, $20 million with a 2 years. Well, yeah. 2 years with a team option. So essentially, it's 1 year. Yeah. So but it's just like, why? What are you trying to do with that? You're high on, what was it? They draft Chandler Hutchinson.
Hutchinson from Boise State. The one thing, though, is that unless you truly put Parker at the 3, Hutchinson's like the only real 3 that they have. And Hoiberg is high on him too, so that's another reason why we might see him. Another question that we might have, to be completely honest, is will Fred Hoiberg survive the season if things really go under?
And that's like, what are you trying to? This team is very mismatched, and we're not going to even mention the Cristiano Feliciano 4-year, $32 million deal.
Yeah, they're going to be paying for that for quite a while. That
that was just you're bidding against nobody, and but and then they got Cameron Payne, who's they had like 5 point guards last year,
and they have an issue at center unless you can move Wendell Carter Jr. to the center, which is possible. You have an issue at the center spot because if Robin Lopez goes down, who's still a decent defensive center and a rebounder, and he's got a bit of dirtiness to him, your only backup is Omer Asik, and Asik is like, I'm pretty sure a handful of games away from like a medical waiver.
I see Wendell Carter as a center in the league. You don't? You see him more of a 4?
He's got that burly physique, and he likes most of his scoring is around the low post. So judging by that type of framework, he's a center. But
okay, you say that from him and Markkanen, they'll both sort of roam around, and they're not going to be.
Markkanen is more of a Dirk. He's almost like a spitting image of Dirk Nowitzki.
So he's just a 7-foot shooting guard.
Pretty much. But a good rebounder, though, like I keep saying.
Oh, yeah, no, he is a good rebounder, deceptively quick. It's like, oh, he's going to be slow. But no, he got around, and he wanted to – he has no problem banging down low, which is cool. It's just, like I said, this team just doesn't make any sense. I don't know how they what their plan is, why.
Well, I understand the fear of the cap floor. I mean, we're sort of in a place now where that's almost impossible because, like, for example, that's why they were able to take on the Ashik's salary because they were kind of nearing this, going under the salary floor. But then you go out in the summer and you sort of overspend. Yeah, and that was sort of the big question mark with Chicago is like, if you're rebuilding, why are you putting in contracts that are going to sort of like slow down the growth of the rebuild? That's the big question.
I just see Levine signing as just a panic move. I don't see how it helps.
Just small things I just wanted to ask you. Antonio Blakeney, do you think he'll get more playing time?
He got the two-way last year. He got the full contract this year, so good for him. He played hard. Granted, he's still making less money than he did at LSU, but it's okay.
Is Justin Holiday still the worst Holiday in the league now that Aaron is in the league?
He's in the NBA. I'm not going to hate. He's not.
Well, that's more of a compliment to Aaron because I think Aaron's actually going to be pretty good in Indiana.
He's more of a system fit there, I think, as opposed to talent.
And let's be honest, he ain't no Drew. Drew's really, really good. Cameron Payne, now or never?
This is basically it. This is what he has left, and after this, it's just straight Europe.
Did they make a mistake turning down the team option on Paul Zipser?
I don't know. I wanted to be high on him, but it was just incredibly frustrating to watch him sometimes.
And is Denzel Valentine the best bad player you've ever seen? I'm convinced Denzel Valentine's a bad player. But when I watch him, he's fairly productive.
I think it's just everybody just, why bother? We're not going to plan for him. We can play off him a bit. He's not going to do anything. Oh, well, he did something, and
he's like a point forward, but like a weird type of point forward.
He's an overachieving, like, third string player.
Yeah. And he's still in the mix because he was a first round pick, so he's still in the mix. He was
in the lottery, I believe. He was.
Yeah, he was up. He was up there, so he's still in the mix. But Chicago, I think they're going to be interesting. I really want to see Chris Dunn in year 3. Like, I think in year 3 he's going to really take off. And when Markkanen comes back from his injury, we'll see what they do with Jabari Parker next to him, and Bobby Portis and Wendell Carter. It's interesting, but I still think the team is going to suck. I'm sorry. It's just not – they were 26th in points. They were 27th in defensive. It's just got all the recipes of a bad team.
Maybe the next coach can do some wonders with them.
It depends on how soon that coach shows up. Okay, Adam, let's talk about your Brooklyn Nets, because as anybody who's been listening to this podcast all how far is our audience built? Is it to the, like 85, 87?
Oh, dozens.
Dozens
Dozens
and
robots.
dozens of fans. You have always been sort of high on. You can't call it the process because it's more of a classical approach to rebuilding a team because they were so badly under the gun with the Billy King Boston Celtics trading of the draft picks that everybody always talks about in 2013. We're now past that. All those draft picks that they had owed to Boston are now gone and washed away. And Kenny Atkinson and Sean Marks, the GM, they sort of kind of played it easy. Now we're sort of at a point where they're – I don't want to say it's sort of like what Magic Johnson did with the Lakers, but it's somewhat similar because they're – putting some pieces together, and they have a lot of contracts that come up next summer, so they're going to have oodles of cap room. But you feel like the team has actually improved over the years.
The team became a team. It was a complete grind for them to – don't forget, they had absolutely nothing. They were completely white bare, and all of a sudden, no draft picks, no nothing. You're playing, Sean Kilpatrick on a 10-day deal for 40 minutes, and it's just – Isaiah Whitehead was your crown signing in the second round like 3 years ago.
You bought out Darren Williams, and then you had some small moves like you brought in Jeremy Lin just to kind of give people some hope, and Lin didn't really do much for you. You were sort of the dumping ground for contracts like when DeMarre Carroll went there. That was sort of a dump by Toronto, for them.
Well,
essentially.
DeMarre Carroll was a dump, but I say this.
But he didn't play like a dump in Brooklyn.
No, we had said that he was out of place in Toronto the whole time, and he fits much better there. But we need to remember with Crabbe and Otto Porter even and Tyler Johnson, they chose to sign in Brooklyn, and everybody else they happened to match them. But I think
they liked the money on the offer sheet more than they liked the destination.
But you're not saying anybody would have came up to Otto Porter with money. You think Brooklyn was the only team that was like, we have cap room for you a couple years ago?
Well, I think they probably were realistically after – because here's the thing. This is a long discussion but that we could have for another time. But RFAs, a lot of people thought they were moving up the signing time for RFAs so that they can make it easier, when the truth is the RFAs are still at the same extreme disadvantage that they had always been over the years, where they're always last to get the crumbs on the table after the unrestricted free agents and all the trades are made and all the drafts are made. And – I feel like after the free agency signings were done, and because Brooklyn was such a non-attractive destination, that they literally were the only team left with cap room, and that's why they made the offer sheets.
But you could say about them not being a non-attractive destination, you managed to get, Jared Allen, who developing.
Yeah, he's got a lot of shot blocking skill, long arms. Not easy to find decent centers. It's not easy.
You get the number 2 and number 3 pick of the 2015 draft in Russell and Okafor. You took a flyer on Okafor for nothing, and to get you took on Mozgov's contract, so you get Russell. So that's not a bad thing, and you slowly develop. You find a Joe Harris and a Spencer Dinwiddie.
Spencer Dinwiddie played very well last year. I think he was the MIP candidate.
Yeah,
right?
You get them off the scrap heap, and then Karis LeVert showed signs of life, and you know what? This team is blossoming, and you add more pieces. They made smart trades and smart signings, and we'll take your crap, but they're players who are fitting in and productive. Like they got Kenneth Faried, who I think might be making a little resurgence a little bit.
Well, I mean, he's sort of in a no-win situation. He has to play well, because he's in the last year of a fruitful contract. But it's one where the Nuggets were done with him for a lot of different reasons. It was I said prematurely. I said that divorce was on its way. But we'll see what happens. Maybe he could do something similar to what DeMarre Carroll has been able to do. I'm still intrigued by Rondé Hollis Jefferson. Now I know that he'll never be the shooter that you wish he could be for his size and his game, but he seems to have a lot of tools in his belt.
He does, but I think he's just going to be more of the 3-and-D type guy, and he's not going to take that extra leap you think he will.
I do think because of their max cap room, they will be able to put him into an extension, something in like the $16 million range in about a month.
You are really high on that, and I would probably just let the market decide him. But the real question is now, the real intriguing part for me with Brooklyn is they got these 2 European draft picks.
No, that's Jajan Musa, and the other one is a guy named Rodion Kuruc. I've heard about Kuruc more than I've heard about Musa, but you're more intrigued by Musa.
I'm more intrigued by Musa because Musa supposedly has that Josef Nurkic, like he has that killer attitude. He's just young and immature, but he's like, yeah, I'm going to go out and shoot 30 on you. I don't care who you are. Mm-hmm. And, that's the attitude you really need. And, Roderick, he was saying, I'm going to come here this year. I'm going to play this year. And everyone's like, no, stay in Europe. Stay in Europe. No, I'm going to come and play. And that's why he fell. He literally, he fell all the way to the end of the first round for Brooklyn.
Well, the other thing, too, is that buyouts are so much easier now with these Euro clubs because of how much money that you have left on the table. That you can do the buyout if you want, if you really desperately want a player. We're not in those years like Ricky Rubio in like 2009 and 2010 when he was saddled with like such a high buyout figure. Now, like you could negotiate that down to like nothing to get the player that you want.
Yeah, and so these 2 kids are interesting, and that'd be interesting to watch how they develop because Musa could supposedly shoot lights out. Mm-hmm. When he gets hot, he has that that J.R. Smith on button.
Do you think Shabazz Napier can be a dependable backup to D'Angelo Russell?
That's just a smart signing. That's just we'll get you for nothing. We'll get you just slightly above the veterans minimum. He leaves a perfectly good situation in Portland. Mm-hmm. He's like, well, I'll come to Brooklyn. I'm not taking a ton of money, but it changes. That's for a solid backup, third stringer. Not bad at all.
Jared Dudley, that's more of a leadership deal. I feel like with a guy like Dudley, it's not as much as what he can prove on the court, even though he's still got some 3-ball game to him, but it's more of like, can he give you leadership in the locker room type of deal? It didn't work out in Washington, and we have a lot of reasons why we think it didn't work out in Washington or Phoenix. But, he
worked out in Phoenix. He was fine there. It was just, well, we're paying you a ton of money, and well, we don't need locker room because we're just
because we need to sign Trevor Ariza to like all this money, which is just.
Yeah, we don't need we don't need to be with these young guys because we're just going to blow everything up again. So this team they'll still win 25, 30 games. They're not going to be.
Yeah,
really...
I feel like they're going to be what the Lakers were last year. Like if they win 30 games, it'll be a pleasant surprise.
They win 30 games
after 2 years of Kenny Atkinson. How do you feel? Like it's like a fast-paced team that doesn't shoot the 3-ball well, but they shoot a lot of them. Like, what do you think about this team in terms of their style?
Their styles, let's just keep running. We don't care if we miss it. Let's just run and then shoot the ball real quick. But who cares? Just run our sets. We're just going to practice these few years to get ready to be a real team. But the one thing I can say about Brooklyn is just you watch their games, they still don't quit. They play to the end. They just don't have talent to do anything. It's, it was like watching the Lakers towards the end. It's like, well, why are they winning games? Shouldn't they be tanking? Well, no, because they want to play. They want to win. And you always saw that fight and hustle on this Brooklyn team.
The one thing I'll take away from this, and we can wrap, is that is there still another level that we can see be reached for D'Angelo Russell? Because I feel like, some people would purport his stats because he was a number 2 pick and they feel like he was drafted too high, but he is talented and he can fill it up, and he is an assist guy. I feel like he can reach another notch. That's the most interesting thing I want to see out of Brooklyn. If he can be like, I don't want to say elite. There's too many good players in the league, too many good guards. But if he can be like a 20 point per game, 6 assists per game guy, now we're talking. Now we're talking about a team that could be attractive.
If he can be a top 50% point guard, that's the leap he could make. It's
like
just
a Mike Conley type. Yeah.
injuries, the problem is, like, we're at this golden age and this resurgence of point guards and all these young all the Colin Sexton and Dennis Smith, and you have these young kids have the potential of they're 15 and 20th best. It's like, well, injuries have derailed him. They really slowed him down, and they took a good year off of him. So he needs to come back, and if he turns that corner like they want him to, and we think he can, this team with a max contract next year or two, dangerous.
Yeah, but a lot of interest. And we didn't even talk about Ed Davis, decent signing. They needed some help up front. But yeah, very, very young team, plays fast. But I think a lot of the intrigue is next summer. Okay, Adam, is it new beginnings with the Charlotte Hornets now that we have Mitch Kupchak rearing his head again in the NBA GM sphere? Now not running the Lakers, running Charlotte with his buddy Michael Jordan, North Carolina faithful, and then a new coach in James Borrego, who we had seen before as an interim coach with the Magic, but then he went as back to being an assistant with the Spurs for a few years, and here he is replacing Steve Clifford, who was fired. A lot of changes at the top, but on the roster, not so much because they were in a lot of cap gridlock as they have been for the last year or two.
I can sum up this team. We could just blow through this really easy with Charlotte. I'm sorry, fans of Charlotte.
You can tell we're at the tail end of this. Yeah.
I feel sorry for Charlotte fans that they have to deal with this team, and it's just. You've created such a mucky, muddy situation where, I thought Howard was a great signing for them, a great trade. You obviously
mean Dwight Howard, not any other former NBA players not with the last name Howard. Like Josh Howard. You remember Josh Howard?
What did I say?
You said Howard.
Okay.
Are there any NBA players with the first name Howard? I'm trying to think. Not sure.
Well, they traded for Howard Cosell.
Dwight Howard had some really good statistical games.
He had some great statistics. It was just going to be, just Lob City all day with them. It was just, then he was like, I'm not getting enough touches, and he fell into his same I'm a superstar pattern, and everything fell. It's just this team, you can't, we mentioned this with Minnesota, you can't have two players who are the exact same player, and you have Batum and Kid Gilchrist who are just mirror images. They both have the same flaws. They both have the same strengths.
I've been saying that for years. Like
you
that
can't
when they re-signed
Michael
Kid Gilchrist, it was a mistake. Yeah, that they should have just let him walk.
You have Marvin Williams still as your four, and you have to look at this roster and be like, why would Kemba Walker want to stay on this team? How does this team look any better? And then, you put your entire, I don't want to say they put their entire faith on, or the entire hopes and dreams on, but they put a lot of pressure on Malik Monk to do something last year.
Well, and now it feels like a lot of that pressure is falling on Miles Bridges. Now, Bridges is talented, but, he does have flaws to his game, just like Monk does, because they're, really young players, and, that's just what you live through. But when you have to sit here and over-rely on that, that's what sort of killed Frank Kaminsky. Kaminsky came in when the team was still pretty good. Batum was playing for a contract, and he had, one of his best seasons as a player. And then he got his big contract, and the production slipped, and that's sort of been one of the linchpins of it.
Batum got his contract because Kid Gilchrist was injured again. So then you bring Kaminsky in, which was, the famous Boston offered you 4 draft picks because they wanted Winslow so bad. And it's just like, no, we're going to draft a third string center who can't do anything but shoot threes. He can't rebound. He can't play defense. And it's just like, he was just a horrible pick for them and just a bad mistake.
Cody Zeller got extended. He has had good production, but he was limited by injuries. He only played 33 games. I do think he's a good player. Now that Howard's out of the way, you could sort of play him right there and be more of a pick and roll center, be able to just play a little bit faster.
And the funny thing, Kupchak comes back, the first thing he does is trade for Mozgov. It's like, okay, maybe he did like him in the end, and then somehow flips him for Biyombo. Mm-hmm. So,
which is ironic because he was drafted by Charlotte in the first place. So it's
Was he drafted by Charlotte, or was he traded? Yes.
One way or another, he wound up in Charlotte as a rookie.
That was that big J.J. Redick, and it was a 4-team thing.
And to bring it full circle, that was the same year that Charlotte drafted Kemba Walker. Now, Walker, you could probably argue. Let's just say like Charlotte from the beginning of that franchise, not the Hornets, which became the Pel. We're not going to do that time travel bullshit. Kemba Walker, is he the best player in the franchise's history?
That's not saying much.
I know, but I mean they've had their share. They've had their share of Bobcat / Hornet players come through there. The Gerald Wallaces of the world and such.
That is another discussion for another day, but he is up there, and unfortunately, he's just going to be a big distraction. Unfortunately, because of what are you going to sign? What are you going to do? You should trade him.
What do you think is the holdup there? He's making $12 million a year. He's obviously underpaid. He's an unrestricted free agent next year. What do you think the holdup is? Do you think it's coming from Walker's camp because he just wants to play both sides, so that he either can go to a team he wants to play for in the trade deadline if they decide to blow it up, or do you think the Hornets sort of secretly want him to go away?
Oh no, the Hornets don't want him to go because there's no backup. Their backup.
Well, I get that, but because if you move Walker, you're blowing it up. You're rebuilding.
Their backup last year for point guard was Michael Carter-Williams, who is not back again this year.
No,
so that says
that's
how much
why they drafted Devontae Graham out of Kansas. So
in the second round, so that doesn't really say much.
And then they signed Tony Parker. A lot of people feel like I know there's going to be sort of that, like, how they always have that Johnny Unitas played for the Chargers deal where it's like, really, this is the craziest thing, watching Tony Parker not in a Spurs uniform. But it happened. He got a decent contract out of it, so I can't really blame him. He's going to make $5 million. He wasn't going to get that from San Antonio. The other thing too is that he's buds with Nick Batum, so that was a connection that they wanted to make.
Yeah, so no fault of him. They're going to offer him $10 million over 2 years. It's just, like you said, Miles Bridges has to be. He needs to overtake one of those two.
I think Monk might have a good second year if they decide to start shooting threes.
Well, here is the thing with Bridges. Do you think they're going to try to force him into a 4, or do you think?
That's the problem when he was with Tom Izzo at Michigan State. Like, they always tried to make him like a 3 when he really was a 4.
Yeah, but he was a college 4, but he's an NBA 3.
Because he was 6'6", yeah.
Because he's just a tweener.
But the league is getting smaller and smaller. I mean, look. I mean, I'm watching the NBA Finals. Jordan Bell is playing center. So I'm not saying it's impossible. That Bridges can play the 4. Now, when you're playing those really good power forwards like the Durants of the world with the long arms and such, yeah, you're gonna have some trouble. Bridges is super athletic. Monk's not necessarily athletic because he's only 6'3", but everyone knows the offensive punch that he has from the 3-point line. It's just a matter of whether or not he can find his niche. Then you got a lot of other guys: Willie Hernangomez, Dwayne Bacon. I'm sort of missing. Then they got some other smaller people that they picked up, like J.P. McCura and such and such and such. But really, it just kind of comes back to that same central cast that they were sort of locked in. Jeremy Lamb, Marvin Williams. They just can't move them. They can't move the contracts, literally.
Any chance they make the playoffs this year?
No. I think they're going to be like a 30-win, 32-win team. They're going to win less games than they did last year.
Does Kemba Walker get traded?
Yeah, but it's going to be at the deadline. Like, I think they're going to just hold this out until they can't hold it out any longer. And then Walker will be the potential, like the quote-unquote missing piece for a team that's trying to make the playoffs or make a run. But I mean, Walker. It'll be. I don't think it's going to be a messy divorce. It's going to be one of those things where the Hornets just aren't competitive at that point in the season, and it's okay to cut ties. I don't think we really. I don't know if we have a good enough memory of Orlando Magic coaching history because the Orlando Magic are a dumpster fire, and they've been for quite a while. But do you remember anything about James Borrego? Like, what do you think he's going to bring in? He comes from the Spurs Popovich tree, but I don't really know what to expect out of this team.
I don't know what to expect, but given the roster they have and the fact they couldn't make any moves, it's going to be you can't do anything else but what you've been doing. I don't think this team is flexible or adaptive enough to put on a different style. You just sort of have to grind it through this 1 year and hope the pieces stay together.
Yeah, I just feel like a lot of changes are on the way, but we're still in that position where we can't make any changes yet because a lot of the contracts that they have are just are locked, airtight until we get to really next year when you got guys like Kaminsky, you can let him go. I'm pretty sure Michael K. Gilchrist will use his player option next year, so that's not going to happen. And then obviously Kemba Walker. I do think there's a small possibility Kemba Walker just re-signs for max money.
Well, they're going to offer it. It's just I don't know why.
But
around him.
But if they offered it, why hasn't he signed it? That's what I think. I don't think they offered it to him at all.
I don't. Well, I think they want to. Well, can you wait so we can make moves before you do it? Don't kill our cap immediately. The old. If you wait a week or two, we could do these weird deals that somehow fit under the cap to make our team better.
Well, that is a good point. Because if they put him to 20, if they say example they ripped up the contract and they did like a extend and re-sign type of deal like they did with Harden and Westbrook, you're in the tax. You're permanently in the tax, and that's what they're desperately trying to avoid. Well, you could have avoided that by not signing deals like Cody Zeller and Marvin Williams and Michael K. Gilchrist, but you already made those mistakes, and now you have to reap what you sow. All right, Adam, the Memphis Grizzlies. Oh my goodness, they had so many players go through this. It was like the mall at Christmas time for the Grizzlies organization. They didn't even know what owner they were going to have because they had that I don't want to call it open enrollment, but it was sort of that open phase where they thought the minority owner might try to buy out the majority, Robert Parra, but it didn't happen. Now they retained J.B. Bickerstaff after they had fired David Fizdale. They had lost Mike Conley earlier in the year. Marc Gasol played through it, but he seemed miserable half the time. They were so downtrodden with their personnel that they played Tyreke Evans like crazy amounts of minutes, and he had like really good numbers, but they weren't able to move him at the trade deadline to get anything valuable. So they just basically ate it up until he left in free agency for I think it's the Indiana Pacers. Am I right?
Yeah, he left. It was just all weird one-year deals
like
last year.
If you look at it statistically, it's just so strange. You see, like Tyreke Evans led the team in scoring, and you had Andrew Harrison playing a lot of minutes, and you had Mario Chalmers pop up. Deontay Davis is gone. Ben McLemore, who they had brought in, is gone. James Ennis they let go. Jarrell Martin, who they were somewhat high on, they just kind of let him walk out. Dylan Brooks, who was a second-round rookie, he played a lot of minutes. Just a very, very weird team, and led to a 22-60 record. It almost feels like a rebuild, but the funny part is that you have these two enormous contracts between Conley and Gasol, so you can't really make that many moves.
Yeah, you're stuck with Gasol, and he's declining a little bit now, and I'm being generous by saying a little bit.
Still a good player, though.
Oh, he's still a good player, and then he essentially ran Fizdale out. It was a me or him type deal. Of course, you take the players over the coach. And just the way the management's been run, you have Harrison was your starting two guard for half the season, or getting a ton of minutes because there's just nobody like.
But the personnel moves were the elephant in the room is the Chandler Parsons contract. That's the part that maybe let's just say by some Christmas miracle that Chandler Parsons actually is productive again. Do you think the Grizzlies could actually be somewhat good if they kind of hit it all, hit 3 for 3 with Gasol, Conley, and Parsons all healthy and productive?
No, because Conley is getting older. Gasol's on the downcline, and Parsons will just give you what he can, and all you can sort of do is hope for a solid 25 minutes from him. Anything else is sort of gravy. It's then you go on this youth movement, and it's just again bad management, bad front office. Daniel Davis, you trade a first-round pick for him because you were so high on him. Then you trade him away because, we got no space for him. You with the 35th pick, I think 2 years ago, they signed the Serbian kid. Was it? I can't forget his name now. Radovic.
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
And they cut him in training camp after just signing him to a 2-year deal because, we have too many guaranteed contracts. Well, how are you developing players? You got lucky
I'll
with
give you
Dylan
another
Brooks.
one. They signed James Ennis to the mid-level exception, and then they just traded him to the Pistons. That doesn't make sense.
They had to get rid of him, and then you bring in weird veteran signings like Calderon and who else did they get this offseason?
They got Garrett Temple in a trade. They brought in Shelvin Mack, Omri Caspi.
Yeah, that's the thing. You get Caspi, you got Shelvin Mack, like solid veteran players who would be like 11th, 12th players on like a championship team. Like, why are you bringing them in? That doesn't. Garrett Temple, I think, was a good sign because they haven't had a two guard for how long now, and he can actually shoot.
Like a good one. That's why they had to play. They had to keep bringing back Wayne Selden from the G League like constantly because they didn't really have another guard. That's why do you think Dylan Brooks played so much at the three? I actually think they were able to sort of stabilize the three by signing over Kyle Anderson. I actually thought that was a good signing.
See, that's another sign that doesn't make sense. It's like, well, are you going for this rebuild? Or are you improving? It's just like it's half and half, and the team's gonna be a 25-win team, 30-win team again. But
that would still be an improvement over last year because of how much of the attrition that they had with injuries and just and the fired coach and Bickerstaff, he was an interim coach also with the Rockets and he decided not to go back and do it, but he wanted that head coaching job with Memphis and Para respected that and gave him the job basically, but you just kind of wonder if he's the right fit or maybe he's just the guy that just wound up being there when they had to go into this sort of transition period where they had to move on. I will say with their high draft pick they picked, and also it's going to be the last one they have because I think they're going to be having forced to trade next year's, or is it the year after to Boston?
It's one of those weird protection rules.
It's one of those.
One through a lot of. I don't even know, but again, you gave up a first round pick and then you dump him because Ivan Rabb fell into your lap a year later.
But long story short, with the third pick, they got Jaren Jackson Jr. I think he'll be a gem. I think he'll actually be pretty good.
He'll be pretty good because there's nobody opposite Gasol. Mm-hmm. Gasol, you've been just using Brooks and now that Marshawn.
Yeah,
Marshawn has made his way back in the league. The Brooks brothers are something to look forward to, and this team has talent. They re-signed JaMychal Green for 2 years because he overachieved. You got people. It's just, what are you doing? Why are you going in by getting veterans?
Mm-hmm.
What are you? I don't understand managerial what this team is going for.
I feel like what it is that, like I was saying with Bickerstaff, is that they're holding on to whatever amount of respect that they can still get from, or faith that they can get from Gasol and Conley, because they know that they're not going anywhere. But at the same time, they know they got to move things around, and they're just hoping they have the right blend of either underrated players or good pickups through the draft. And Jaren Jackson Jr. is a good start, but you still got a ways to go. And I know that they have that trepidation over potentially losing that high draft pick in the next couple of years. So there's just a lot of fear there that they have to hit as soon as possible. Maybe that's what was part of some of these moves, like bringing in Kyle Anderson and things like that. The biggest problem for me is, like I keep saying, this Chandler Parsons deal, they can't move him because he's not expiring until 2020. I mean, maybe you can stretch him next year, but it's just one of those things where until you can get rid of it, it's sort of like what happened with Omer Sheik and Alexis Ajinka in New Orleans. Like, if you can't move the deal, it's hard to make moves. You've got to be able to move them in order to get better.
Yeah, there is a lot to be said about addition by subtraction.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, again, with the team, just shooting is always a concern because they don't have shooters.
Mm-hmm.
And, Temple alleviates that some, and Caspi's
They were 24th in three-pointers made. They were 27th in field goal percentage overall, 28th in efficiency on offense. Very bad. Defensively was where it really got scary because, they really weren't a great rebounding team even when they had Zach Randolph, but they were 29th in rebounding and they were 20th in defense. Now, that is not Grizzlies basketball. And so you sort of wonder with Bickerstaff, are they going to try to speed things up? Because they were the slowest team in the league. Like, do you think that they will continue to be a slower team, try to help the younger guys learn, or do you think they'll do kind of like what Brooklyn did, sort of speed it up and help them learn on the fly?
Oh, I think you have to be a slow team because of Conley's back issues and Chandler Parsons being made of paper mache and, Gasol's slowing down, and you have to work with the talent. You can't just come in and be like, okay, now we're going to run this year. Those guys wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
So it was just your what is it, ground and pound or whatever they're called?
Grit and grind.
Grit and grind. They kept them together for 2 years too late, and this is the problem of, well, your fresh group just turned stale, and now you need to replace them, and it's just an awkward time trying to.
Yeah.
Again, the Anderson signing I think is a good one. I just don't understand why they would do it.
Yeah, and he's slow-mo. That's his nickname. So, of course that he'll fit with the Grizzlies. I will say this is a very small side. Have you seen their new court? It's like one of those softer kind of like outline type of courts. It is, how with the FedEx Forum with Grit and Grind era, it was very much like, it was very solid, like dark blue all over the place. Like it was almost like an intimidating feeling when you were boxed in by the Grizzlies defense. It literally feels softer, like a lighter powder blue. It was very small touch that I noticed when I was watching them in preseason, but I was thinking, man, they really are trying to change things.
There we go. Memphis has a pretty court.